Buenas tardes, mi gente, and welcome to another episode of CTLN Opinion Plus. As you know, this is a place for our concerns. And today we have a very special guest. We have Cynthia Martin, the president and CEO of the National Conference for Community and Justice. Welcome, Cynthia. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you for joining us. So first of all, some people may not know about NCCJ. So can you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Sure, happy to. So we've been around since 1927. So we've been at this for a little while, and we are a human relations organization that does social justice education and advocacy work. We are, the shortest way to put it, we advance equality, we promote justice, and we build community. And so it's great to be here to talk about these issues.
And what are some of the programs that NCCJ offers?
So we work with middle school, high school, and everything older than that. So with our middle school program we have is called NCCJ Bridges, and it's a three half-day program where we help young people start to understand who they are and help them feel better about themselves, help them understand identity challenges and issues, and really look at behavior challenges. So there's a lot of bullying, we'd call it in school, but there's a lot of bias-based behavior. And we'd like to see what we can do to help young people become critical thinkers and to feel better about themselves. We do the Bridges program with our high school also, and that's a 2-day program. And that usually feeds into what we call our Anytown program. And NCCJ Anytown is a 6-day residential experience that kicks off a year of being involved with NCCJ. But we take 100 high school kids away for a week and immerse them into the subjects of social justice issues. So we look at what we call the big 9 identities: racism, sexism, gender, sexual orientation, ability, age, size, body size, class. And always, I think what makes NCCJ's program special is we never look at just the oppression of a group of people without also looking at the fact that one group of people is advantaged or privileged. And I think that's what makes our work stand out. And then, of course, we work with adults. So we do that through 2 methods. One is our NCCJ workplace program. So we go into corporations or not-for-profits or organizations or schools and work with teachers. And we do programming for them, help them see what they can't see. Or we do diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, where we really work hands-on with an organization or a corporation and help them look at their employee base, whether they're equitable, whether the pay scale is fair, how do they promote inclusion. It's one thing to count numbers, which is the diversity aspect. It's another to have inclusion, which means people feel valued and part of an organization or a corporation. And so we do that work hands-on with a company over a long period of time.
I think it's great that you're starting so early in middle school. Hopefully that's a way to curb the ignorance, I guess, in one sense, and give people a sense of self, a sense of worth, so that they don't feel stifled and into a box based on their race, sexual orientation, or anything. So I think that's great.
So middle school is the time period where kids really start to isolate and go into groups. And really that's when bullying picks up. It's the height of bullying. It's the height of the time of being mean to each other, when we're really so seeking to fit in. But these are conversations about race and racism, sexuality, and the issues of sex and sexism. These are conversations that can go on all through elementary school also, and we highly recommend that. And we do work with teachers and staff, but we just don't work with that age, young people. But it is important to have those conversations. We know 6-month-old children can see the difference between my skin and what's not my skin, right? And they start to really understand race. So are they given an opportunity to have the conversation? Because it gets confusing in us when we don't have those conversations. So
Right.
it's important. These are important subjects.
Right. And if it isn't addressed, I mean, it could go all the way to the professional level. I mean, look at what's going on right now. Several companies are completely restructuring and finally having the conversation of inclusivity, of diversity, of gender and racial equity. So that's great.
Yes, I love that you say finally, because that's exactly what we said. We've been around talking about this stuff since 1927, and these are important, really important conversations. But finally, racism has really risen in the United States as the key to conversation, and is a key conversation. I want to put it that way. So we're really excited about that. We're doing more work than ever, and people are really recognizing the importance to have these conversations. So it's an exciting time, even though it's a really upsetting time, because there's also been an incredible rise in hate and hate crimes. The FBI just came out with their 2019 report, and there's been a rise in every form of hate crime, which is devastating. You know, I've been doing this work for 32 years. I thought I should be put out of business by now. I would have thought, and I did think 30 years ago, what am I going to do when I get into my 50s and 60s? And here I am, where we are still talking about these issues. And the fact that rhetoric and hate crimes and white nationalists these conversations have gone unchecked for the last few years. And so NCCJ is really needed, and we do important work.
Right. One can say they've been completely unchecked in the last 4 years, but hopefully we're moving towards a time where it'll go back in the closet, or better yet, completely eradicated.
Yeah, well, so in the last few months, there was an executive order put out that put an end to the work of NCCJ. And, that would have been devastating to us if that executive order held for more than this year. And we hope it gets overturned, right, in the new administration, of course. But to think that there's no need for having conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion is devastating, when really it's so needed and it's so important. And I'm so proud to help bring that out into the public here in Connecticut.
And you're talking about the executive order to stop all sorts of workplace diversity and equity education, correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
not to be able to talk about racism or privilege or what is implicit bias, as those having conversations would make things worse. Having conversations never make things worse, right?
Right.
So,
And speaking about conversations, this past summer, the country was in an uproar after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Can you talk about how NCCJ has tried to engage in conversations and actions about race in America, even while this is going on?
oh, this is so important. First of all, it's devastating that we as a country care about this subject more because there's been another murder. And so let's start there. I'd like to see us keep this conversation alive, and not because there's any more murders. I'm a white woman, and it's important that white people are having these conversations about race and racism. And NCCJ offers a 2-day anti-racism program open to the community once a month. And our program has been sold out every month since July. So if you had asked me 9 months ago, would I ever do a virtual program? And I would tell you no, that having everybody in a room is the most important thing. But because of COVID, we've had to go virtually, and our programs have been wildly successful. Because I think there's a yearning to understand this subject matter in new ways. I think one of the challenges, I'm a product of the 60s. So one of the challenges that came out of that is white people were taught to understand a little bit about racism, but get to know people and have a friend and be involved. And I think that we lost sight of what systemic racism is, what oppression is in a big way, rather than just the one-on-one have people you know. So NCCJ really delves deeply into the subject matter of oppression and systemic racism, and really help people unpack this subject. We have a very much a no blame, no shame. We were born into this time period. Often we are not educated about race or racism or other identities like sexual orientation, gender identity. We have a platform to have those conversations. And, it's been quite thrilling to have those conversations nonstop about race and racism, but all the forms of oppression really need to be part of the conversation. And we believe all forms of oppression can end if we stay in conversation, we talk about action and ways that we can move past all of that. And so it's really important when we do our anti-racism work, we always have a white person and a Black, Indigenous, person of color, or BIPOC person, and we co-facilitate all our work together. So we always have somebody in the privileged identity and a person that's been targeted or having oppressed identity, so that we can really get knee deep into these conversations and help people see what they can and learn. Because once we really understand this subject matter, we want to do something about it. All of us do. So it's really important that we educate, which is our platform, and help people learn and see and how the United States has been functioning and how we can go forward, because we can totally go forward, and that's the way we work.
And you have organizations around the country, and in Connecticut, there's a large population of Latinos. How is your organization focusing on Latino communities?
So, we focus on all the communities that are marginalized and picked on, and we make sure to bring visibility to that which is not visible. Mm-hmm. And so it's so important that we're talking about brown and Black people, especially when we're talking about race and racism, biracial and multiracial. But, since the horrific terrorist attack in El Paso, Texas, where in the wall, I get all emotional about this stuff. So still, after all these years, I still get emotional about all this stuff. Those murders, that murder rampage in Walmart is devastating. And the thing about hate crimes is that they don't just affect the people that were in that incident. It affects the community. And so we need to make visible these situations so that we can be talking about it, so that the community can start to feel like they are being seen and heard and respected, and that they are being supported. And so though we're in the greater Hartford area, right, and we're in Connecticut, it's so important to talk about what happened in Texas. And it's so important to talk about immigration status and the dreamers and all the devastation that's happened around this subject matter in the last many years. And so we do a lot of that work, and we do a lot of anti-racism work, and so that we can really make sure we're making a difference for Latinx people and for, right, every other marginalized identity. But Hartford has a huge population of Latinx people, and it's really important that that is celebrated, right? And not, that's a gift. That's a gift.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Cynthia. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation, and I'm sure everybody watching also agrees with you and finds this conversation important and informative. So thank you very much.
So Bonnie, it was lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for having me on. Happy to come back one day, I hope.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
That was Cynthia Martin, the CEO and president of the National Conference for Community and Justice. That's all of our time for this week. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media handles, on Twitter at CT Latino News and Instagram at CT_Latino News. I'm Savani Campos with CTLN Opinion Plus. See you next time.